老师听得到吗？
我听得到。
有，老师，我们这边声音也很清楚。我们现在测试一下，对，我们现场抓一下画面。
好的。
我们也有看到老师有 share 你的 PowerPoint 吗？
你现在可以看得见吧？
可以，可以。
好的，那就没有问题就好。
Good morning, everyone. As we begin the second day of our seminar, I'm honored to introduce Professor Guotai Zhen, Chair of the Department of Environmental and Cultural Resources at National Tsinghua University.
Professor Zhen is a leading voice in sustainability and environmental studies, and we are privileged to have him to the stage.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Guotai Chen. I am the chairman of the Department and Environmental and Cultural Resources at Tsinghua University, Taiwan. I'm going to chair this morning keynote speech. It's my great honor for me to welcome all of you from all over the world to this keynote speech by Professor Zhang, Zhang Siqiu, Zhang. And she will do this speech online. Let me introduce you about our keynote speaker, Professor Zhang. She is a professor of environmental economy at Beijing University. She has been teaching on environmental economy and environmental management. She also has been conducting many advanced and outstanding research projects related to management and environmental issues, which covers environmental economy, global environmental treaty, also about sustainable development and governance. Today, Professor Zhang will discuss how to integrate environment economic analysis into the policy making for sustainable air quality management. Her case study will taken from the mainland China. So now let's welcome Professor Zhang.
Okay, thank you so much, Chairman. Thank you for the nice introduction. And hello, good morning, everyone. Unfortunately, I cannot be on the site to join with you. And I think there's so many colleagues and friends there. I hope that we can meet each other face to face in the near future. And what I'm going to discuss this morning is about integrating the environmental economic analysis into the policy making for the sustainable air quality management based on some of the research conducted by research groups. I think many of you have already aware that since the late of 1970s that China introduced the open door policy and have the implement the economic reform. Since then, that the economy grows so fast. After about 20 to 30 years development by end of 1990s, I think many researchers and decision makers have already realized that China needs to find a new way that to balance or reconciling the economical growth and natural capitals and social capitals, etc., etc. That's why in the late of 1990s, we called that China needs to find the turning through path that which will not only benefit to China but also benefit to the world. I think we all expertise in those areas for those developed countries. They have the possibility that to reach the turning point, but this turning point, it may not be the turning point for China. Somehow it could be a tipping point. So China needs to find the way that we call the turning through path. That means China to find an innovative and a leapfrog road to continue its progress of economic development and industrialization and urbanization. And after the development, I think during the past decade and until now, China is really in the very critical stage that I would summarize as the 3T and the 3E. T refers to turning point, transition, and transformation. 3E really refers to the word that we are quite familiar with, that efficiency, effectiveness, and equity. And I think now China has already realized that we need to address the local, regional, and global environmental problems under the overall framework of sustainability. And the way to achieve that is promoting the so-called eco-civilization, greening the economy, restructuring the energy, promoting the low carbon and carbon neutrality practice, and innovation, both technically and institutionally. We know that whenever we talk about sustainability or environmental solutions, it always involves multiple dimensions and complex. It's really a complexity issues. This really requires and calls the systematic and the synergetic approach to address those multiple dimensional problems. That also implies that we have to integrate the concerns on environment, economy, and the society together. I think it's not only for China, but globally, the academia called strongly about to promote the environmental governance and called the sustainable communities, which led by Aura Young, Daniel Majmonia, and Macrocraft, etc. And for China, as China finally, apart from a to reach the tipping point, that China's environmental situation really reached the turning point. That for the environmental governance means for China is that how we continue to let the strong political wills play the role, but also to have the bottom-up approach. That also implies that a command control market-based instrument and the civil society state must be combined, because we also realize that no single instrument can address all. And from our expertise, of course, in the market, we definitely need to get the price right. The pricing policy has always been in the central of the policy making and the policy debate. And all the policies, we cannot only targeting on the short effects. It must be combined the short and long-term effects. In all that, I would say that effectiveness, efficiency, equity are all equally important. Let us take a brief review about China's air pollution problems. I think those, for example, Professor Xiao and other professors who visited China before Beijing before, you definitely know how polluted of Beijing was. This map from NASA, which is the PM 2.5 averaged over year 2001 to 2006. So you will find China is definitely among the most polluted countries in the whole world. And Beijing, Tianjin, Hebei areas is the most polluted areas. So you can see the color very easily. And in the 2011, WHO released the World Urban Air Quality Report. Unfortunately, out of 1,082 cities, Beijing ranked 1,035. And the best air quality city, Haikou in China, which is located in Hainan province, ranked after 800. So that's the So that's just to give you a taste about how serious of the pollution is. And the World Bank conducted a research that to estimate the losses by PM10. At that time, not so many people really talk about the PM2.5, and the health losses by the pollution of PM10 account for 2.8% of China's GDP. It's a quite high number. And of course, you can always find the different numbers for that. And by the end of the year 2011, I'm not so sure whether you have already heard the story. The U.S. Embassy, which has their own monitoring system, and recorded very heavy pollution in Beijing, and they labeled that hazardous level, which attract a lot of attention from not only the attention to the public, because the academia has already known, the decision makers know, and the public make a lot of pressures on the central government. And the government really wants to take this opportunity to address the very serious air pollution problems in Beijing. And one of the major steps is that they link the PM 2.5 into the National Ambient Air Quality Standards revision that was started in the year 2012 and implemented in the 2013. And of course, you know that if you have the air quality standards, you take actions, the air pollution cannot solve just by one day. And in the year of in January, late of the December of 2012 and January of 2013, China was hit by very heavy pollution at least 20 provinces. And here I just list the numbers of that. And in Beijing and surrounding areas, the concentration hit the record that 700 microgram cubic meters. And we all know what that means. So that's the history of the air pollution. After the revision of the national air quality standards, and China started to prepare the action plans for improve the air qualities, which we call the phased approach. That in the first phase, that in summarized in Chinese tradition, they always use the numbers to let the public and the national to know that what we are going to take. So they summarize as 10 measures. Actually, it's the National Action Plan on Air Pollution Prevention Control, targeting for the from 13 to 2017, and which was implemented, and following by Blue Sky Battle, or the battle for the better air quality, that target on 18 to 20. And now we have the continuous improvement of air quality action plan. So by implementing of those plans, it's not only just a plan, it's like an overall working package to improve the air quality. And which include some comprehensive policy and institutional arrangement, and based on and by improving the capacity building. For example, the air quality, all the capacities for the air quality. I just for the monitoring, forecasting, reporting, alerting or warning system, emergency response, and the science for to identify the pollution sources. And just to give you an example, before 2012, in Beijing only have 26 monitoring stations, but now thousands of sensors was there, and the data was disclosed. The real monitoring data was disclosed since 2013, and by the capacity building, China also introduced a set of emission reduction measures, which covers from the structure adjustment or restructuring process and production process, and also targeting of the end users with all the supporting institutions, institutional arrangement and the policies, which covers legislation, market-based instrument, and also other financial arrangement and administrative measures. And in turn, that China successfully, well, if I can use the word of decoupling, that by the year 2018, one can easily observe the faster growth of GDP, energy consumption, private vehicles, and the decrease, the faster decrease of the pollutions, for example, the PM 2.5 and sulfur dioxide. And Bloomberg cited the research of University of Chicago saying that China reduced air pollution in 7 years as much as US did in 30 years. Well, we can explain that in different ways, but just cited this wording. We all know that as a late developing countries, that we definitely draw a lot of experience from others. So you definitely you may not need that much long to deal with the problems. Which those kind of conclusion is not only concluded by the international researchers, but also concluded by the researchers from China. For example, Zhang Qiang's group from Tsinghua University, they have observed and assessed the accumulated effects of the pollution reduction. And you can also see from the government data reporting system that how fast of the pollution being reduced since the year 2013 until recently. And I think this map will give you a more clear visual image of how the PM 2.5 concentration changed in China from the year 2000 to year 2020. And so you will see this 2000, and this is 2020. So it's from the colors point of view, you can see Beijing is getting more clean, much more clean than before. Just give you some figures. For example, that in the year 2013, the annual average concentration of PM 2.5 was almost 90 microgram cubic meters. I think many of you may never see under such kind of pollution situation. But by the year 2021, the PM 2.5 dropped to 33 microgram, which is well below the air quality standards that China introduced in the year 2020. And by 2022, the PM 2.5 annual concentration continues drop to 30 microgram cubic meters. And it's very interesting to observe. I cannot list all, but just to give you some examples. You can clearly observe the huge technology investment and the huge market growth. And this slide shows the assessment by different groups, they all observe the turning point of air pollution. And you can also observe with the economic development, although the energy consumption increased dramatically, but the energy efficiency also increased very fast during the past 30 years. And as a return, we can also, as China, combine, try to address the synergetic approach to targeting on the climate change and air pollution, which also in turn to promote the production of solar PV and other renewables. And also, for example, you all know the electronic cars, the price of the solar decreased largely, that it's in some of the provinces is almost competitive with the coal burning electricity already. And my colleagues from Peking University, the health groups, those health researchers, they have assessed the overall health effects generated from China's clean air action plan, that during the 13 to 17, the premature deaths attributed by the PM 2.5 exposure reduced from 1.2 million to 1 million, which is quite a larger number, of course. And they also assess the economic burden and savings by for the healthcare spending alone. It would account about 1% of the GDP. And of course, that there are many other research that although China made the progress, but the economic burden of air pollution is still there. For example, that China's the Greenpeace has the number that China's economic cost of air pollution from fossil fuel burning accounted 6.6% of its GDP. And due to the not only due to the recognizing of the importance of the environmental quality, and also the long-term China's vision for the development, as I mentioned, that sustainable development, and also being encouraged by the success story of the air pollution control. China calls very strongly called a new era, proposed a new world of great prosperity. And this also requires very strong political wills and commitment from the high levels until for the official line, but also needs to address the concerns, increasing pressures from the public and civil societies. And that is the start of the China's new stage, that to call the transformation and transition from the conventional polluting first, clean up later, to a greening, we call it greenization of the economy and society. Although the vision is there, the targets are there, but challenges are still quite heavy. As we all know, that if we really want to build up a sustainable society, we cannot only address just a single dimension. We need to address the economic growth to especially for China as a developing country, need to maintain the sound economic growth to increase the living standards of the public. But you also need to concern about equity, safety, innovation, security, efficiency, etc., etc. That, and also we are aware that all the environmental problems, not only just air pollution, but water pollution and land uses, and climate change, biodiversity, ozone depletion, ozone layer depletion, they are all linked together. That implies that we have to link the economic, social environment with the human development. The challenge is that can China explore and implement the effectively of the integration of the economic, social, and environmental concerns, and to have the innovative, not only just an idea, but also to promote innovation, both technically and institutionally. As we all know, without the institution support or reform of the overall context, the technical innovation would not happen. And when we talk about the greenization, it's not only just a talk about the economic or industry, it's always related to production and consumption. And of course, China has their very strong promotion of to implement the eco-civilization and called multiple stakeholders involvement governance. And this slide shows the conceptual framework for the green development in China. And we need to address from the socio-economic development point of view, we need to address the poverty alleviation and rural development, infrastructure, urbanization, industrialization, energy and the resources development and restructuring. And we are targeting, we need to, the target is to maintain or increase the natural capitals, or we say that to ensure the total capitals would not depleted, or we can increase the total capitals, which covers natural capital, economic capital, social capital, human capital. Well, everyone has a different name on that. So in that cases, that's why I strongly call the policy making and decision making process is not only to consider about the effectiveness. You have to link of the efficiency and equity issues together, and to increase targeting the human development. That also means the overall welfare needs to be increased. And for the long term, a society, when we face the, for example, the very dynamic environment or natural capitals of the world, including the extreme events that happened, the resilience is so important. So the traditional or conventional management may not enough to meet those kind of pressures. We call the risk management or resilience-based management for the future. This also opens up large rooms for environmental economics analysis should and can play its role in the environmental protection, address the so-called three pillars. So if I can summarize based on my experience in China, I will say what the environmental economics can contribute in many different areas. If I may summarize as the following. The first is to help the public and the society, especially for the decision makers, to recognize the value of the environment, how important it is, and why it is important, how we make trade-off among the environmental losses and economic benefits or financial benefits. And the second area is that when a society make their pollution control target, how they need to consider. And the third one is that suppose we can make a sound target to for the long term, how we are going to get there. That is the issue of how we find the pathway. And based on our expertise, we all called the least cost solution. And at the same time, so we need to consider about the distribution effects, not only just from the social science point of view, but also the regional distribution and also in the other dimensions, not only just the income group. And suppose we know the target, we know the pathways, but what will be the vehicles to drive us there? That is related to the studies of environmental economics, the behaviors of various stakeholders, and to whether the price signal works, and how we are going to provide the incentives for the policy targets. They change their behaviors more environmentally. And finally, I think environmental economics also contribute to the institution and the policy innovations. That is the governance related issue. For example, the public participation, information information disclosure, and involvement of non-government organizations, etc., etc. So if we come back, this is quite simple. We all know that. When we consider about the target, conventionally we call the map in the left is really that I call the political target or engineering target that either based on the politicians' willingness or public pressures, or based on the feasibility or how much resources I have. So they made the targets based on the cost we have. And from economics point of view, that we are based on whether the total total benefit exceed the total cost. That will let us know that whether the action is needed or not, should do or should not do. However, we have to conduct the marginal analysis, because only the marginal analysis can help us to reach the point Q, and to help us to identify the least cost solution for that. And from policy point of view, that we can either have the price-based instrument or quantity-based instrument to help us to reach the optimum level. So basically, we say that the environmental economics always tell the decision makers and the public the perspective of society is not equal to the perspective of individuals. How to address those issues, I think the environmental economics can contribute so much. And we all know that the government intervention to make the right policies to create the market failures or internalize the external costs is always been the key theme of the environmental studies. And for the how to achieve the targets, as I mentioned, that we can call that the pathways to achieve the pathways and the policy instruments to achieve the target. We all aware that this is Molina and his colleagues. They have a big project in Mexican City, and they for the different measures they can reach different. They have the different emission reduction potentials with the various costs, and that they can develop this. It's like a marginal cost curve, and this curve is based on our studies. Start from year 2004 until 2010. That is covers Beijing Olympic time. And during that time, we strongly argued with the government that you should not only targeting on the big polluters, you need to link the concern, link the real situation that different measures has different emission potentials and has variety of the cost to reduce to reduce the concentration of pollution or single tons of pollution. So we develop the marginal curves for the government. And then we have to realize, at least in China, normally when people talk about the efficiency, they are really only refers to technical efficiency. They talk about conservation and better use of the resources. But from economics point of view, we always refer to allocation efficiency, because that we are targeting how the resources being allocated to different uses, reasons, time and space, vertical and horizontal, to maximize the net benefit of the overall society. And also, we should not ignore that the different policy selected or instruments selected, they also have some implications on efficiency. And overall, that the cost-benefit analysis is so important, especially for a country like China in the developing stage, that they can help to optimize the allocation of the scarce resources with the consideration of the distribution effects for various groups. So now we come to some of our studies, just to share with you some of the studies. And as we mentioned, that we need to let the government and the public to understand the value of how important of the environment or better air quality. We can either value that the importance of that, or we base what we are going to lose if we don't protect them in different ways. And because health is always been the major part of the impacts of air quality changes. So we single term, we use the value of statistical life. I need not to explain that too detailedly. We all know that. And WCEREA has already been incorporated in U.S. Clean Air Act estimation, and also they also linked that to the air quality standards annual revision process. And however, for the developing countries, we still have a lot of difficulties, and because we know WCEREA is not a constant parameter. It's related to, it's varies based on the risk types, income levels, and different ages. And in practice, for developed countries, usually they have the official guidelines or suggested parameters, but for the developing countries, it's quite limited primary studies conducted. And if you simply use the benefit transfer, if we don't know the relationship of the WCEREA with the risk type, income, and ages, how we are going to get the benefit to be transferred correctly. So that is the major motivation for us trying to conduct our first-hand study to value the health risk, which is jointly worked with Jin Yana, who is a BOD member of our association. And we use the choice experiment, conducted this study in Beijing, and we got the WCEREA and WSI, the value of statistical illness is from for the WCEREA is over 5 million Chinese renminbi, and for WSI, for one case of the WSI is 0.82 million same way. And after we conducted the choice experiment studies and published the paper, and we want to know how many studies conducted in China, because we only have one study there. So since a couple of years ago, we started to go through all the literatures in the different countries, and then finally we decided to focus on China's study to understand the VSL studies in China. We conducted a meta-analysis in China, which we only found 19 papers, but it's good though, including 1,231 VSL estimates and covers environmental risk and health risks, and also the health risks related to the health impacts. And the takeaway message from this meta-analysis, I would say we find that the income, magnitude of risk reduction, and risk context, that the different types of risks, they are all important for VSL. Of course, income plays important role, but not the only role there. And we have tailored the VSL estimates for environmental health and transportation related risk. And we are currently further trying to identify why they are so different, why the risk types makes it so different. And we also, the study also released implies the early action, the better results comes out. And we also has two findings of compared with previous research that currently we don't find no evidence of a publication bias. And we also find very importantly that VSL in China increased significantly since the year 2013. And now, following the DCE conducted in year 2016 and the meta-analysis now, and we are in this year we started to continue to conduct a new discrete choice experiment in Beijing, just to try to solve what happened during the past over 10 years. We would like to, I think this study will be complete by next year. And when we have the VSL or with SI, a natural step is that to evaluate the health effects of reducing the air pollution. And this paper has already published. I need not to talk to detail it due to the time constraint. And we assess the total mortality cost in various regions and the marginal abatement benefit. And we also discuss the per capita total cost for different income groups, and also the marginal benefit for abatement of the PM2.5 concentration, and the typical city compared with the other cities as well. And the conclusion of that study is we find the total cost, I will not say the numbers, but I just try to say that we found that the differences among the cities with different socio-economic situations. For those group of the dirtier cities, the high income and high population cities, of no surprise that the highest total cost of PM 2.5 has the highest total cost of health cost. But for the group of cleaner, we found the high income, the high populated city has the highest marginal benefit of PM 2.5 abatement. This has a very strong policy implications because usually when policymakers make their decisions, they base on the biggest polluters or the easiest polluters to deal with. But what we find is that China needs not to only focus on the very polluted areas, but the priority as well is to targeting on those clean areas that to reduce the pollution, to control the pollution at the same time. So we do find the costs and benefits is matters for the policymakers. For example, that China introduced the phase out coal policy, or phasing down coal policies since the year 2013. And Beijing called strongly that to phase out coal in electricity plant. And we conducted a assessment of the social net benefit for phasing out coal in electricity plant, and or compared with phasing out coal of household, and we find the negative net benefits for phasing out coal in electricity plant. But I should say this is only refers to Beijing because the energy situations. And another study related to the gasoline car substituted by electronic car. From the unit vehicles point of view, one may generate the conclusion that the net social benefits may not be that high. But we identify that if China started to promote the electronic vehicles in those high population and high pollution areas, that will generate large net benefit. So this just so the environmental economics can also help the decision makers to make the right decision and identify the priorities. And if we link the health and the economic assessment to the studies, we would also contribute to the decision maker as well. For example, here is the concentration of PM2.5. If we're only focusing on the concentration, this is the prioritized areas. But if we consider about the population exposure to the PM2.5 and the health risks, and then we will targeting on those other areas as well. But if we conducted economic assessment, we would find targeting on those those very polluted areas, and also targeting on some clean areas is both equally important. So that will provide some implications for government how to spending their public expenditures to provide incentives for local government to deal with pollution. And another case is that, sorry, this is very long ago, this ground level which is targeting on the ground level ozone pollution in and around Beijing. What we find is that the regional coordination is more cost effective than if we only targeting on China's environmental system at that time is the local based. For example, Beijing would spend 4 times more cost than if they address ozone issues based on the regional level. And this one also helps us to understand that when the pollution is so severe, command control definitely generates some higher net benefit. But when the society, the air pollution is getting more clean, and then you would find the market-based instruments will have a more efficient. Another study is recently completed by one of the PhD students is talk about the digital the digital and financial inclusion policies and the relationship with energy poverty in China. And what we found is that digital finance and will help largely to the energy poverty and can help to deal with the accessibility and affordability problems. And we are also working on another paper, which is related to rural rooftop PV adaptation, and we compare the two studies, the two policies. One is a village-wide residential rooftop PV program, and the photovoltaic poverty alleviation project PPAP. And what we found currently, is that despite the differences of the environmental and health benefits generated from those whole process, the most important thing is that whether the household being provided the possibilities to choose the feed-in tariffs or net meters will make a lot of difference for the behaviors of households, whether they introduce the installation of the PV, rooftop PV, and whether their house and energy structure will be changed. And of course, that another related areas, as I mentioned, that the phase 3 of China's air pollution control is to continue improve the air quality. The WHO revised its standards in the year 2021, and China is discussing of whether we are going to introduce the new air quality standards. And at the same time, China introduced carbon neutrality policies, and based on Chen's study, the carbon neutrality can provide an excellent opportunity to reduce PM 2.5 by the year 2060. The PM 2.5 will reach about 8 microgram. So they are all beautiful stories. However, what would be the policy tools to address that? So we are targeting on conducting a CB analysis for air quality standards revision, whether it's worth on our, focus on the time schedules and what reasons, and whether the more cleaner reasons being benefit as well. And so the basic conclusions currently is that the premature, the only health risks, the benefits by avoiding the future health risks will account 1 to 4% of GDP by tightening the air quality standards. So as almost a conclusion, and we all know that the Asian countries have the most mortality associated with air pollution. For example, that over 2 million of the mortalities in the Southeast Asian regions, so based on China's experience, I would say that science-based policy making and actions for clean air is so important, and that also provides the windows for environmental economic assessment to contribute to its role. And also, we find the differences if we only targeting of the air quality, or we are more stressing or focusing on the health the health benefit will make a difference for the design of the environmental policies. And in conclusion, I would say that although the air quality improved largely, we still have a lot of lessons or experience can be learned, and we're trying to correct and further improve the policy making process. For example, that we found academic studies can play a very significant role, which means that the policymakers need to make the decision based on the evidence and the right information. And economic analysis, of course, as I mentioned, can contribute to that. And we also find that strong political wills must be combined with community willingness and actions. That implies top-down and bottom-up approaches are both important. And our policy making should not only focus on the short term, it must be focused on the long term perspective and integrate all the considerations. And as I mentioned before, no single policy tools can work well. Usually, especially for the situation in China, usually it requires a working package, an action package, and to combine the various policy tools, command control, market-based instrument, information disclosure, public participation, and also the public interest litigation played much more important role in recent years. And of course, that in the future, I think the environmental economic analysis has we have the responsibility to contribute to least cost solution to study about the behaviors and to help to get the price right and to further promote the health-centered or oriented strategy development. Okay, Chairman, I stop here. Sorry, I take more time and leave quite a few time for questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Zhang's speech has shown many evidence and research result. So now the floor is open for discussion. We welcome your question and comment. Any question, any comment?
Yeah, Professor Zhang, I'm Junli Hu in Hsinchu. Okay, you made a very wonderful speech. I learned a lot. Okay, because of time limitation, let me hit my question. In your slide, you show several possible CO2 reduction paths, and also you also show that China may hit the so-called carbon emission peak on each possible route. But as you just mentioned, if China follow its sustainable development goals, it may not be so easily to reduce to the 1.5 degree centigrade target. It's still very far above that. But in that photo, there's no economic cost or GDP loss. So I'm wondering if China wants to reduce the CO2 emission a lot, what would be the economic cost, or will it be economically feasible to do so?
Mm-hmm. Thank you for your questions. And yeah, I think this is a very hot topic, and where everyone discuss about this. And first of all, I would like to say that China's the carbon peak and the carbon neutrality targets, I think it will be achieved, no problems, but based on my experience. But the issue is, as you mentioned, that whether China can take more ambitious way to reach the 1.5 degree targets. I think China has a willingness to do so, but the situation is that there are quite few studies. I mean, a lot of studies, but quite few studies, sound studies, to discuss about the macro level, macroeconomic impacts by introducing more ambitious approaches in China. And the current conclusion of the studies will solve the losses, economic losses, if China introduce a very ambitious approach. But I think that this is also a question puzzled me for a while when I think about air pollution in China. For example, that about 20 years ago, we talk about the solar is so expensive, 10 times of coal-based electricity plants, right? But once the restructuring started, you will find the learning curve changed, the scale economy reached, and also experience for the electronic cars. You know, I I my study conducted about 5 years ago. At that time, you still find the financial cost of electronic vehicles so high, but recently you find the real cost reduced so largely. So this the lessons we learned that the cost benefit we conducted is quite narrow. But for a country to targeting on the climate change and other global targets, you should not only rely on the narrow down cost benefit analysis. You need to have a strategic thinking. That's why I mentioned about the long term perspective. So I do see very positive evidence that if a country introduces more stringent environmental protection policies. Thank you.
Sorry, our schedule is very tight, so I think it's time for us to close this keynote speech. We must go on to the next session. Thank you for your keynote speech, and thank you all of you for your participation. Good day. Thank you. Thank you, Professor Zhang. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, everyone. Okay, goodbye. Enjoy your conference.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor John, for your insightful keynote.
Now we will move on to the next session, which will be chaired by Wan Yu Liu, Distinguished Professor of Zhongxing University. The theme of this WCEREA special session is Forests as a Carbon Sink, Climate Change, Land Use and Biodiversity, Economic Perspectives.
Please join me in welcoming Professor Liu to lead his important discussion.
So could you start the slide of mine? Thank you for coming to this special session. Now I would like to begin this session, WCEREA special session. I'm Ken Nakao, and I will be serving as the moderator of the first part of this session. And Professor Liu will take the role of the moderator for the latter part of this session. Thank you very much. WCEREA stands for the, okay. Could you start the slides of mine? Yes, thank you. Okay. Okay. Okay, so WCEREA stands for the World Council. Oh, sorry. World Council of Environmental and Resource Economics Association. WCEREA is an organization that hosts the World Congress for Environmental and Resource Economists, and it is composed of the Association of Environmental and Resource Economics, AERE, from the United States, the European Association of Environmental and Resource Economics, EAERE, the African Association of Environmental and Resource Economics, AFERE, and our own Asian Association of Environmental and Resource Economics, AERE. The Latin America and Caribbean Environmental Economics Association, LAERE, is expected to join us soon. Each year, the member societies of WCEREA select a common theme and hold special sessions on that theme at their respective conference. This year's common theme is climate change, land use, and biodiversity economic perspectives. We have chosen the forest as a carbon sink as our main title and have invited 5 speakers, including myself. The speakers are Dr. Wanyu Liu, professor of the National Chung-Chun University, Taiwan, and Professor Yo-Won Son from Korean University, Republic of Korea, and Dr. Ya-Tseng-gon from Renmin University of China. She is participating online now. And Dr. Ida Aju Prejuna Lesos Darumo from Australian National University, Australia. She also participating in with online now. And myself, Ken Akao from Waseda University, Japan. I really appreciate having such distinguished researchers for these sessions. Now I would like to start the session, and I will be the first presenter. Okay. How can I? Maybe this. Yes. Oh yes. Oh sorry. Yeah. Okay. Oops. Back. Back. Oops. Back. 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 Yeah. Okay. Back. Yes. Yes. My topic is about forests in Japan, and I will be discussing two main points. The first half will cover the current state of Japan's forests, and second half will focus on the forest-related to forest-related policies that I believe are necessary based on this Japan's current state. First, regarding the current situation in Japan, this table shows data comparing the forests in Japan to those in Asian region. The first characteristic of Japan's forests is the forest coverage rate is high at 66%, which is 3 times the Asian average. The volume of forest stock per hectare is also double the Asian average and is on increasing trend. Interestingly, however, the carbon stock per unit area is lower than the Asian average. In terms of the forest type, Japan has a higher proportion of planted forests, twice the Asian average. Very huge, high number of the planted forests. In terms of the forest, additionally, contrary to my expectations, a relatively large amount of primary forest remains, with the proportion being 1.5 times the Asian average. Regarding the ownership, nearly 60% of forests are privately owned, a proportion that is almost 3 times the Asian average. I would like to introduce Japan's carbon emissions. As shown in this figure, LULUCF, land use change, and forestry, which includes carbon emissions and absorption from forests, contributes to the carbon sequestration in Japan. However, this only amounts for merely 5% of Japan's overall carbon emissions. And the next figure, this one, provides a detailed breakdown of the LULUCF. It shows that carbon sequestration is almost entirely carried out by forests. However, the amount of the carbon absorption has been decreasing since 2003. In 2022, the amount of carbon absorbed was nearly 30% less than in 1990. So to investigate whether this decrease is due to land use change, I have prepared this table. It shows that between the 1990 and 2022, both forests, listen, and the cropland decreased. And increase went to the settlements. However, while the decrease in cropland is significant, forests have only decreased by 1%. Therefore, the decrease in forest carbon absorption is not due to land use change. The cause is aging of forests. This graph illustrates the age class distribution of forests in 1966 and 2022. The age classes are in 5-year increment. More than 50 years ago, in 1966, there were many young trees with vigorous growth. This indicates that the amount of carbon dioxide absorbed was also high. Currently, the distribution center has shifted to age and age class 12, and this means that trees are now between 55 and 60 years old. So the growth rate is quite low. If these older trees are harvested and replanted, carbon absorption could increase. However, the next figure shows this may not be the case. Okay. This graph is related to the planted forests. This shows that over 20 years from 2002 to 2022, the age distribution appears to have shifted to the right in parallel. To clarify this figure, look at this figure. The red color represents the area harvested, which shows that there has been very little harvesting. The green color represents the area of new planting, which has been decreasing year by year. The renewal of aging planted forests is not active and is trending towards becoming even less so. As a result, while the forest stock is increasing yearly, the amount of carbon dioxide absorption per unit area has been steadily declining since 2005. Earlier, I mentioned that harvesting has become inactive concerning reforestation. However, this graph showed that the amount of harvesting has been increasing since 2002. And in recent years, harvesting for wood biomass power generation has been on the rise. This increase in harvesting combined with the consistent decrease in the area of new planting suggests that there is an increased number of the forest being abandoned or left to natural regeneration without reforestation after harvesting. This could have a negative impact on biodiversity. Therefore, let us now look at the current state of the biodiversity loss in Japan's forest based on the data from the IUCN Red List. This table, very small table, shows that the number of endangered species living in Japan's forests, as counted from the Red List, a significant number of the species are at risk of extinction. The numbers in parentheses indicate the number of endemic species in Japan that are facing extinction. Because Japan is an island nation, Japan is considered one of the biological hotspots and is home to many endemic species. For example, all amphibians at risk of extinction are endemic to Japan. Additionally, all bird species that have gone extinct were also endemic. In many classifications, the number of the endangered species is the highest. And in some cases, nearly half are classified as critically endangered. About time trend, about 80% of species listed experience population declines. The loss of biodiversity is quite serious in Japan. Okay, so I have just discussed the current state of forests in Japan. Now, based on this context, I would like to talk about the policies I consider that is necessary from both microeconomic and macroeconomic perspective. Let me begin with the microeconomic perspective. When considering the contributions of forests to the two critical issues of climate change and biodiversity loss, forests plays three key roles. First, they serve as a source of biodiversity. Second, they act as carbon reservoirs. Third, they function to remove and sequester carbon from the atmosphere, carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. Additionally, the traditional primary role of forests has been to provide the forest products, mainly timber. But this use competes with the role of forest as biodiversity havens and carbon reservoirs because these functions are best maintained by conserving the forest. On the other hand, the carbon sequestration service does not necessarily compete with timber production. This is because harvesting forest at the appropriate age and replanting new trees can enhance the carbon removal capacity. Therefore, the way forests are utilized differs between the two functions and the latter two first functions and the latter two functions. Okay. Okay. Sorry. Okay. Please look at the upper panel of the diagram on the right. It illustrates the trend of the forest stock volume with respect to the forest age. Okay. Listen. Yeah. Forest age. Yeah. Okay. This volume increases over time. Biodiversity and carbon storage functions also improve with forest age. That means that these functions are best preserved by not cutting down the trees. On the other hand, the lower panel of the diagram shows the annual growth rate of forest, which closely related to the amount of the carbon absorbed. This growth rate peaks at around 20 years of age. It is for the representative species trees in Japan Japan cedar, the optimal harvest age for maximizing a timber sales profit varies depending on timber prices and interest rates. But for the Japan cedar, it is around 80 years. Theoretically, the optimal harvest age, considering both carbon sequestration function and the timber profit, can sometimes be longer or shorter than the age that maximized timber sale profit. In any case, these functions are not realized unless the trees are harvested and replanted. The treatment of forest will differ significantly depending on whether the focus is on the function, the first two functions, diversity and carbon storage, or the latter function, carbon sequestration and the timber product. Therefore, the zoning becomes an important forest policy. And in fact, forests in Japan are zoned. But the issue is that due to the high percentage of private ownership, strict regulation for forest conservation cannot be enforced. Even in a national forest, the past practice of an independent accounting system has led to the tendency to prioritize revenue. However, due to the declining profitability of forestry in Japan, there are limited forests that can be harvested for profit, and policies for conserving a forest without cutting may not be that difficult to implement. The challenging part is promoting the policies that encourage forest harvesting, which is necessary to realize the carbon sequestration function of forests. From an economic theory standpoint, a desirable system would involve making the environmental payment to forest owners at a price equivalent to the social cost of carbon, and requiring the carbon emitters, such as waste disposal operators who release the carbon from harvested wood products, to pay for the social cost of the carbon emissions. Such policies would promote the forest management aimed at carbon absorption while delaying the release of carbon stored in timber. Even though the carbon absorbed by forest will eventually return to the atmosphere, the delay in carbon release creates a social benefit. While I don't have time to explain the economic theory, one clear benefit is that this delay buys time for future technology to provide a better solution. Unfortunately, in both Japan and the world, the value of buying time is not well understood, and the policies I have just mentioned are not being considered. Next, let me discuss policy I consider important from a macroeconomic perspective, that is green GDP. GDP and its growth rate, economic growth rate, macroeconomic indicators that are key points of interest for a broad public. GDP is broken down into consumption plus investment. By adding the value of environmental amenities to the consumption component and subtracting the negative value of environmental degradation, we obtain a monetary valuation of the welfare generated in a given year. Furthermore, by considering the value of changes in natural resources and environmental assets within the investment component, it becomes an indicator of the potential welfare that future generations may enjoy for the future generations. These adjustments result in what is known as green GDP. An increase in green GDP that is indicating the positive green growth rate suggests that future generations may potentially lead better lives than the current generation. That is sustainable development defined by the Brundtland Commissions. Similar indicator includes the United Nations inclusive wealth and genuine saving. However, due to the widespread recognition of the GDP, green GDP is considered to have the most appealing to the public. Unfortunately, green GDP calculations have not been conducted in Japan since 2008. If green GDP were estimated and its growth rate published, the reduction in carbon dioxide absorption and the loss of biodiversity would likely result in the growth rate lower than the conventional economic growth. Consequently, people would become more acutely and broadly aware of the worsening situation in carbon capture and biodiversity in Japan forests. Okay, thank you. I'll stop here. We will discuss after all the presenters present. So let me introduce the second speaker. The second speaker is Dr. Wang Yu Liu, one of the most influential professors in Taiwan. So please.
Thank you for your introduction. Hello, everyone. I'm Wang Liu, and I have the honor to talk about this topic. I'm Wang Liu. I come from National Zhongxin University, Department of Forestry. And today, I have the honor to speak this topic, the critical role of forest carbon in Taiwan's path to net zero emissions by 2050. Okay, my academic interests focus on environmental economics policy, economics, climate change, and forest carbon sequestration. Today, I would like to share my recent research and discuss how to achieve this target by 2050. Here is my outline. I will covering today. First, I would like to discuss the key strategies of net zero emissions, and then I will talk about how to achieve this target by natural carbon. Secondly, I would like to share my research balance on green energy and forestry. And then finally, I will wrap up with the policy suggestions for achieving net zero emissions. Okay, in order to combat climate change, Climate Leadership Summit was held on April 22nd, 2021. 40 countries participated, and they declared to reach the net zero emissions by specific year. For example, USA, Japan, and others aim for net zero by 2050, China by 2060, and India by 2070. For Taiwan, Taiwan also declared this challenge target. However, Taiwan is very difficult to achieve this target. There are some reasons. For example, we have high electricity consumption, and we have lower proportion of renewable energy. And for Taiwan, the industry type is technology dominated. And for Taiwan, the temperature of Taiwan is rising and rising again. So in Taiwan, energy demands are increasing. Therefore, we have a lot of scholars begin to discuss how to achieve this target. Let me introduce the definition of net zero emissions. Net zero does not mean no carbon emission at all. Even we switch to 100% renewable energy uses, it is still impossible to be zero emissions. So what is zero emission? Zero emission are achieved when the amount of greenhouse gases emitted into atmosphere is balanced by the amount removed of our offset carbon. In simple terms, if a country emits a lot, then it needs to absorb much carbon. If a country emits less, then there is no need to capture as much carbon. You may ask me how to capture the carbon from the atmosphere. There are two ways to capture carbon, artificial way and the natural carbon way. Natural carbon capture is a natural way to capture more carbon from the atmosphere. There are three kinds of strategies: soil carbon, ocean carbon, and forest carbon. For forest carbon is the carbon stored in forest ecosystem. Second, soil carbon is found in global soils. For example, soil organic matter and so on. For ocean carbon, it is often stored in coastal and marine ecosystems. Then, if you want to achieve this challenging target, we may think how to capture more natural carbon and how to increase the natural carbon sink. For forest carbon, we can use the tree plantings and tree management to increase the forest carbon. In soil carbon, we can enhance the soil organic matter or use the organic farming to replace traditional farming to increase the soil carbon. And for ocean carbon, we can expand seagrass, mangroves, and so on to increase the blue carbon amount. And here is Taiwan's pathway to net zero. Our government proposed 4 strategies to achieve this target. The first one is enhance the green energy. And second one is to improve the energy efficiency. And the third one is to increase the electric cars, electric transportation. And last one is to improve the negative carbon technology, including forest carbon, ocean carbon, and soil carbon. However, if we want to increase the natural carbon storage, we need to provide more incentive to private sector or landowners or farmers. And one of the policies is to provide more carbon credits. Until now, we have only one methodology to transfer natural carbon sink into carbon credits. It is afforestation. Afforestation means planting more trees in new areas. However, only one methodology is not enough. So we have another 7 methodologies under review. The first 3 methodologies are about forest carbon, including low-growth forest, bamboo forest, and forest management, and so on. The green ones methodologies are about soil carbon, including improving agricultural land management and growth cultivation. And the blue ones are about methodologies for blue carbon, including planting mangrove, seagrass restoration, and so on. However, if we want to boost our natural carbon in Taiwan, we face a problem. We face a trade-off problem when it comes to the limitation of lands. For example, in Taiwan, we have a lot of idle agricultural lands. However, the big question is whether we should install solar panels or plant trees. And it is a very hot issue in Taiwan, and the people keep debating. For installing solar panels on farmland, it can reduce the carbon emission. However, it is also harmful to environment and the ecosystem, and also harmful to agricultural productivity. For planting trees, it is, of course, beneficial to carbon sequestration. However, it takes longer time to grow up. So we have some words on forest carbon. For example, how to enhance the urban climate resilience by urban forest. And we also discuss how climate change influences the forest carbon. And also, we also discuss how to calculate the carbon reduction cost under carbon offset mechanism. And also, we evaluate the economic value of urban forests. And now, I want to show you the recent research about how to balance the green energy and the forestry. For solar energy, it is, of course, has immediate reduction in carbon emission, also support the solar capacity, and also reduce the reliance on imported fossil fuels. However, it needs a lot of lands, and it has potential conflicts with agriculture and ecological land uses. And after 20 years, solar energy needed to deal with a lot of unuseful panels and have some problem. For forestation, it can enhance biodiversity and the ecosystem. However, it also acts as a carbon sink, capture more carbon from atmosphere, and also support the water regulation and the soil conservation. However, forestation needs longer time to realize the carbon storage, and the economic value from planting trees is lower compared to with other industries. So both strategies has their strengths and weaknesses. So it is a debate a lot in Taiwan. And we should consider the immediate benefits and the future benefits to decide which one is the best strategy. And in the past, we only sought the carbon reduction amount. However, from the environmental economics perspective, we should consider the cost and the benefits of strategies. For planting trees, everybody knows that production process is carbon negative. And for solar energy, the production process is carbon emissions. And the construction cost of plant trees is lower, and the construction cost of solar energy is higher. However, the carbon reduction amount of planting trees is lower, and the carbon reduction amount of solar energy is higher. And after 20 years, they are totally different. From planting trees, we have a lot of timber production, we have a lot of recreational benefits and the water conservation, and some anti-pollution benefits, and some biodiversity increase. However, after 20 years for solar energy, we have a lot of abandoned or unusable panels to deal with. Okay, so this is our research. Given the limited land area, we should consider which strategy is better. So our study used the comparative study to analyze which one is the best. We consider 3 kinds of strategies. The first one is reducing fossil fuel use. We consider 3 kinds of fossil fuel: coal, natural gas, petroleum. And the second, we consider strategy to increase the renewable energy, including hydroelectric, wind, solar, and the wood fuel. And also, the third one is to expand the forest forest carbon sequestration by planting trees. And as we know, we have a lot of types of forests. So we consider 3 kinds of forests: broadleaf, coniferous, and mixed forests. And then we calculate the cost of per ton of CO2 reduced. And we hope we can provide a more direct way to evaluate the economic efficiency of which. And then we can answer if the nature-based solutions is better or not. Okay, here is our flow chart of this study. First, we set the carbon emission reduction goal. Then we establish the baseline year. And then we compare 3 kinds of strategies: fossil fuel, reducing fossil fuel, and increasing the renewable energy, and increasing the forest carbon sequestration. And there are 10 strategies to compare. And we calculated the amount of carbon emission, and then calculated the cost of carbon emission reduction. And then we compare them and choose the best one, or determine which one is better. Okay, we set the 2050 as the target year. And we also set the 2015 as the base year. And we also collect some data, some Taiwanese data, to set the variables like unit carbon emission, power generated carbon emissions per unit of power of fossil fuel, renewable energies, and forest carbon sequestration. And we calculate them and compare which strategy is better. Here is our result. From the carbon emission reduction amount, we can find that the reducing fossil fuel has the highest carbon emission reduction benefits, followed by increasing forests and increasing renewable energy. And we can notice that the carbon reduction benefits of increasing forests is higher than increasing renewable energies. So the forestation thinks is better than green energy from environmental economics perspective. From the cost per unit of carbon emission reduction, we can also find the reducing fossil fuels has the lowest cost per unit, and followed by increasing forests and increasing renewable energies. So among the fossil energies, we can find that reducing coal-fired powers has the highest carbon reduction efficiency. And among the forestation, the cost of the forest carbon sequestration is lower than current renewable energies. And the broadleaf forest has the best efficiency of carbon reduction. Okay, so here is my conclusion. We analyzed the cost and the efficiency of each strategy to reduce the carbon emissions in Taiwan. And we find that the afforestation or planting more trees have some potential for reducing carbon emissions per dollar spent. So for planting solar panels, of course, it has high carbon reduction benefits. However, the cost is also very significant. However, for planting more trees, it is slower at capture the carbon from atmosphere. However, it is beneficial to the environment and the ecosystem. So, however, it is also has lower cost. So consider Taiwan's unique geographic challenges. We suggest our government should provide some strategies to increase the forest carbon sequestration. For example, we can provide more methodologies to transform the natural carbon into carbon credits. And then instead of just focus on expanding the renewable energy. So this is my today's talk. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Liu. The next speaker is Professor Johan Son from Korea University. He is a worldwide expert of the forest sciences, and he is very productive, more than 450 papers publication. Thank you very much for coming.
Hello, I am Johan Son from Korea University. First of all, I really appreciate the kind invitation for this wonderful scientific congress. My presentation title is Changes in Forest Carbon Stocks After Reforestation in the Republic of Korea. I will mainly focus on modeling approach and valuation of reforestation. This is the main content of my talk. First, brief introduction on background of my work. Second, forest carbon and modeling approach. And third, reforestation and forest carbon stocks in terms of reforestation activities itself and forest carbon stock changes, and then valuation of reforestation, and finally, some conclusions. Traditionally, East Asian countries have highly relied on rice production, including Japan, Korea, China, and Taiwan. Proper management of water resources and nutrients are essential in this region, as you understand. Water, nutrients, and other resources are circulated through forest, rice paddy, and streams in the mountainous landscape. Forests were especially important as sources of water and nutrient for rice paddy. In addition, forests also provided fuels and wood for agricultural tools and buildings. Ancient Korean kingdoms managed forest using inherited experience and belief. In other words, establishing plantations considering local environmental conditions. And also, Korean kingdoms protected our traditional, typical tree species, Korean red pine, Pinus densiflora forest, by setting forbidden forest, enforcing illegal logging, monitoring forest, and controlling pine caterpillars, so on. Here, we have to focus on one important point. Korean kingdoms promoted cooperation with the local villagers. In other words, kingdoms allowed local people to manage forest and collect timber and fuels while they are participating in management of forest land nearby. This photo shows a traditionally well-protected Korean red pine forest surrounding a royal tomb. As you understand, traditional knowledge is indigenous to humanity and acquired over a long period of human interaction with the environment. However, traditional knowledge systems have faded since the global modernization of human societies, but some recently rediscovered traditions have proven themselves to be key components of sustainable development. From that perspective, I would like to say that Korean traditions are closely related to forest and the rich experience of implementing modern forestry system. You know that forest carbon is very important in terms of global carbon budget. Traditional ecosystem, mainly forest, annually sequester about 30% of anthropogenic carbon emissions. Where are carbons in forest? As you understand, it's in above ground biomass, below ground biomass, dead wood, litter, and forest soil organic matter. Then how can we estimate carbon pool and changes in carbon pool? We have two approaches. First one is direct measurement. You directly measure carbon stock and fluxes in forest. However, it needs a lot of work and cost. And also, it has a limitation on extrapolation of observation at spatial and temporal scale. What will be the next approach? It's a modeling approach, as you understand. It's computer-based simulation. It's combination of equations. Many essential data are required for preparing equations. What is the most important advantage of using modeling approach? It is simulating changes in carbon stocks at various temporal and spatial scales. As a forest ecologist, I have been working on those two approaches, direct measurement of forest carbon stocks and changes in carbon stock, and also working on modeling approach. This is the first model that we have developed about 15 years ago as the first trial for modeling approach. The name was Forest Soil Carbon Model, KFSC. Then many people asked me, why do you want to develop another model? There are quite many forest carbon models. However, all of them needs very lot of data. However, in many cases, you don't have those data. So I thought we need a simple model requiring less input data, but still producing accurate result. So I developed that model into more evolved aspect. Name is Forest Carbon Model, FBDC. Forest Biomass and Dead Organic Carbon Model. And I tried this model to different biomes throughout the world. It worked very well. And currently, we have a third generation of forest carbon model, forest carbon and nitrogen model, FBDCAN. And we added nitrogen module in the previous models. Despite the efforts of ancient Korean kingdoms, forests in Korean peninsula diminished because of poaching, private forest monopoly, and natural disasters. And also, subsequent to Japanese colonization and the Korean War during the 20th century destroyed the nation's forest. The Korean government launched a nationwide reforestation program since 1960s. And this is still one of the most successful reforestation activities in the world. So this was the landscape we saw in 1950s and 1960s in the Korean Peninsula. And then we had very active reforestation program focusing on three main principles, including nationwide tree planting, fast-growing tree planting, and economically valued tree planting. So some photos you see, all people were encouraged to plant trees throughout the country. And also, we planted fast-growing trees to prevent floods and erosions. And then we also planted economically valuable trees for long-term economic values. The program was very successful. The success of reforestation was considered to be the result of diverse drivers, including the rapid growth of the Korean economy, the strong leadership of the country, and the substitution of energy sources. Nonetheless, several practices for reforestation was originated from traditional ecological knowledge and practices inherited from ancient Korean societies. What was that? The Korean government encouraged public participation in reforestation similar to historic forest governance during Joseon Dynasty. The Korean government specially attempted to gather voluntary crews for reforestation activities to overcome labor shortages. These governmental efforts imposed responsibility for the reforestation activities on people across all societal areas. So you see some participatory reforestation activities through these photos. And also you saw gradual but rapid changes in forest landscape during the reforestation period. Now I move to the forest carbon stock topic. What was the result of reforestation in terms of forest carbon stock and changes in forest carbon stock and also carbon sequestration? The mean stand volume per hectare was only 9.6 cubic meters per hectare in 1960s, but it increased to more than 140 in 2015. And the total forest carbon stock was about 400 TG in 1954. However, it increased to over 900 in 2012 because of the restoration of the forest. As you understand, the planted trees also prevented soil erosion and provided organic matter by which forest soils became fertile enough for naturally regenerated vegetation to grow. This figure shows how much changes we saw in terms of carbon stock and carbon sequestration. Y-axis shows the carbon stock, total carbon stock, and the other Y-axis also shows carbon sequestration per year. You see very rapid carbon stock increase and also carbon sequestration increase right after the reforestation. This is from our modeling approach. And also, when we add nitrogen, we also see very rapid increase in changes of carbon stock and nitrogen stock throughout the reforestation period. I was interested in valuation of reforestation. If we achieved such rapid increase in carbon stock, what would be the economic value of those reforestation activities? So forest ecosystems of the Republic of Korea provide substantial amount of ecosystem services after reforestation. There are many ecosystem services. Mainly, I focused on disaster risk reduction, carbon sequestration, water yield, and erosion control. However, investigation on economic feasibility of a reforestation program at the national scale is highly lacking. So we tried to calculate economic feasibility of our reforestation activity. What kind of benefit we expect from reforestation? As I said, disaster risk reduction, soil erosion control, water yield enhancement, forest carbon sequestration, and so on. And what kind of cost do we expect? We need to invest money for forestation. So we did benefits and cost analysis, including only benefit of disaster risk reduction among potential benefits, the minimum and the maximum total NPV as shown in 1981 and 2010. And the NPV had been negative until 1993, and then it became positive. In other words, when you start the reforestation, NPV was negative. But as time moves, it became positive. If all benefits are considered in the final NPV, the restoration program of the Republic of Korea had not been economically feasible until 1980s, and then it became highly feasible. Compared to the case of including only DRR, including all benefit makes the break-even point shorten. So I would say that our modeling study evaluated annual public benefits of reforestation and the average annual cost of reforestation. And the ratio between benefits and cost increased from 0.07 in 1972 to 5.84 in 2010. What does it mean? Investment to reforestation is highly economically viable. That's our conclusion. So this study was published in a UNDP policy brief series, as you see here, and also was published in as a paper in Ecosystem Services. So some conclusions. First, total forest carbon sink and annual sequestration increased significantly after the successful reforestation in the Republic of Korea. Reforestation was economically valuable in terms of enhanced ecosystem services, including disaster risk reduction, erosion control, water yield enhancement, and carbon sequestration. Intensive investment for short-term period will be very effective. The benefits from forestation started increasing after intensive investment under 10-year intensive reforestation program from 1970s. Considered with annually occurring benefits through time passage, rapid and intensive reforestation seems highly beneficial in the long term. So if you decide to do, you should do very fast. And at the first stage, you need to invest a lot of money for that. However, we need to have more social and economic factors should be considered in valuation of reforestation in coming years. Finally, I would like to briefly introduce one special program at Korea University focusing on carbon sink. So we developed a graduate program specialized in carbon sink, supported by Korea Forest Service. So we had education component and also research component. So we try to provide actual, very practical experiences on forest carbon stocks and changes in carbon stocks to graduate level students. So you may find some information on the website. And this was supported by the KFS. Thank you very much. 谢谢.
Thank you very much, Professor Son. Next presenter is Professor Yasen Gong, running University of China. She is one of the representative environmental economists of Asian region. She will present online, so please change the screen.
Recent paper that we have been working on. It's about carbon or biodiversity with tenure devolution, evidence from China's recent forest tenure reform. This is the joint work between myself and my colleague, Professor Liu Shilei from Renmin University of China. Oh, by the way, Ken, I have some kind of echoes. Can you, do you know why? Hello? Ken?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, but I can hear my own voice very clearly.
Yeah. A little bit echoed, but it's somewhat clear. So
Okay,
you please
so this
continue.
is fine with you, right?
Yeah. Right.
Okay. So first, let me give you some brief information on why we want to do this work. Since 1980s, an increasing number of forest tenure devolution programs have been implemented in the developing world, such as joint forest management or social forestry in India, collaborative forestry in Uganda and other parts of the world. China even takes a further step to privatize collectively owned forests, which is a common pool resources in essence, through two major waves of collective forest tenure reform. Existing literature has shown that forest tenure devolution by decentralizing rights from the state to communities is beneficial for forest carbon. Nevertheless, the relationship between land tenure and biodiversity is unclear. Furthermore, the environmental consequences of privatization of commons is still under debate. Give me a second. I'm disturbing myself because of my echoes. Some argue that the privatization of property rights will ensure that users have incentives to manage their forest resources better. Others are concerned that privatization of commons may impose threats on environmental sustainability. Our study utilizes China's recent wave of forest tenure reform as a quasi-experiment to examine the impact of privatization of collectively owned forests, which is common pool resources actually. So this is through the privatization of common pool resources, and we want to examine this kind of reform on carbon benefit and biodiversity. So first, before I move into details, let me give you some brief background about China's forests. And the following stats are based on 9th National Forest Inventory conducted during 2018 and 2014 and 2018. Current forest cover in China is about 23%, and we are expecting to have 20% of forest cover in 2035. In China, we have two major types of land ownership, which is collectively owned forests versus state-owned forests. So, in terms of forest areas, about 61%, about 62% of forests is covered by collective forests, and the remaining 32% is covered by state-owned forests. In terms of quality, which is measured in the volume per mu, and we can see that the standing volume of collective forests is lower, much lower than the state-owned forests. And compared to other parts of the world, China's forest quality is much lower than countries in Northern America, such as USA, and the countries in South Hemisphere, such as New Zealand. So the main given the low standing volume, and our government tries to provide strong incentives to forest farmers through the most recent round of the tenure reform. So actually, China has gone through three rounds, two waves of forest tenure reforms. The first wave happened during 1981 and 1984. During this period, actually, our country had a massive expansion of the household responsibility system in agricultural sector, and actually that in agricultural sector, the reform started in late 1970s, and following that wave of the tenure reform in agricultural sector, China's forests also had our reform around the middle 1980s. The second wave of tenure reform happened has happened since 2003, and based on the first round of the tenure reform, the second round actually further devolves use rights and tree ownership to individual farm households. In addition, we also extend the duration of the forest land holdings by individual households up to 70 years. Before this round, like the tenure reform actually was 50 years. So by extending the longer period, extending the tenure period, the government hopes to provide a stronger incentive for farmers to manage their forests sustainably. And even after the 70 years, the contract could be renewed. Furthermore, the most recent wave of forest tenure reform also allows the transfer and the reallocation of forests among farm households. which means that if I have a forest plot, I can contract to other farmers through through appropriate contract arrangement. So these all major measures are expected to provide strong incentives to farmers for forest management, which in turn may help to improve the forest growth. So but whether this is true or not, is still an open empirical research question. That's why we use the sample plots from National Forestry Inventory to conduct our surveys, conduct our research. We use the plot level variables, including the timber volumes. The timber volume is measured at the plot level, which is used as a proxy for forest growth and carbon sink above ground. We also develop a measure for tree species richness, which is the number of tree species in a given plot. The forest tenure dilution actually is measured as a dummy. If there is a change of forest collective owned forest changes from that ownership to individually owned forests, then it's coded as 1, otherwise it's coded as 0. In China, we have 400,000 sample plots across the whole nation, which actually was established by State Forest Administration, formerly known as Ministry of Forestry in China. Among all these 400,000 plots, we use 60,300 plus sample plots from 832 counties of 9 provinces. So the map on the right shows the sample plots across China. So we have the sample plots from northeastern China, Heilongjiang, Inner Mongolia, which is actually mainly state-owned forest lands. And in other parts, like Jilin, which is near northern Korea, it's a combination of the national forests, state-owned and collective-owned. In Yunnan southwestern part of China, which is near the border of China and the other southeastern countries, this region actually is also a combination of the state-owned and collective-owned. Other parts in southern China, we call them 10 provinces actually. This is a major region of collective-owned forest land. So the reform actually mainly took place in these collective-owned forests. Our study period is from we have 3 waves of the data from National Forestry Inventory, which is the first period is 1999 to 2013. This is actually divided into 3 periods. Every 4 years, every 4 to 5 years, we have a national inventory. So basically, we use 3 rounds of the National Forestry Inventory data from 1999 through 2013, which covers the most recent wave of tenure reform. And before I move into detailed econometric analysis, I want to show you tenure changes over 3 periods. And the red color means state-owned sample plots. The blue color denotes the collective-owned sample plots. and the yellow is the individually owned sample plots. If we look at the first period in our data, which is 1999 to 2003, and compared to this period to the most recent inventory data that we have, which is 2009 and 2013, and you can see that we have more plots in individually managed, which is yellow. So we have much less yellow, much fewer plots in yellow color during the 1999 to and 2003, and if you look at the most recent period, which is in the lower corner, lower right panel, and you can see the yellow. There are more yellow plots, and this is basically the changes in over time in terms of tenure devolution, which is from collective owned forests to individually managed forests. And in terms of the standing volume change over time, we compare 2003 to 2013, and the red color means we have the lower, like decreased standing volume, while the green color means there's an increased standing volume over time. And except for southern, like the red one in Guangxi province, that's near southwest part. If you can see, look at the lower left panel. In other parts, because in that province we had a kind of massive forest harvest during 2003 and 2006, because that province has eucalyptus. But if you look at other provinces, you can see that there's a kind of a slight improvement in forest quality in terms of standing volume, because we have more green plots in 2013 than 2003. And this map, these two maps show changes in the number of tree species, which is the species richness. And we can also see some kind of improvement, especially in northern eastern part of China, and provinces like Zhejiang province, which is near Taiwan. And next, let me show you some econometry analysis. We developed an econometry model to analyze the impact of devolution on tree species, that's biodiversity and carbon. But in fact, we do not exactly measure carbon. We use the timber volume as a proxy for the potential of forest carbon sequestration, because as if a plot has fast the increase in timber volume in tree growth, it means that we have more forest carbon sequestration. And we also actually Y means these are dependent variables, which are the timber volume or number of tree species. I is plot. T is the inventory period, which actually in our data we have 3 rounds. And X is a vector of other control variables, which are climate variables, because temperature, precipitation, and sunshine can also affect tree growth and biodiversity. We control for plot fixed effect to control for the unobserved heterogeneity across plots over time. And we also control for time fixed effect to control for common shocks faced by all plots in our data. Because of limited time, I'm not going into details about like documents. But here I want to show you that the devolution is not completely exogenous, and it's not random. We in terms of econometric analysis, we have selection bias, because villagers can decide whether they want to allocate village level, or which is actually collective owned forests, to individual households for their management through voting system. As long as 2/3 of village members vote for yes, then villagers can go forward for proceed to tenure reform. Otherwise, the villagers may decide not to further allocate their collective owned forests to individual households. So in order to address such kind of selection bias and non-randomness of treatment, we first use propensity score matching to address the non-randomness of the treatment. But even after we do this, we still suffer from endogeneity, mainly arising from two sources. One is simultaneity biases, the other one is omitted variable biases. Simultaneity biases means that better forests or mature forests, if a village have more plots of the mature forests, the village leaders may decide not to allocate their lands, the forest to individual households, because the village board can, on behalf of the village, village board in Chinese setting, actually they represent village members. So the village board may have lower incentive to allocate mature forests to individual households. Better forests, that's similar incentive. Also, we may have unobserved village-specific characteristics, such as locations, village leadership, or social capital stock. All these can lead to endogeneity. Therefore, we construct an IV instrumental variable for devolution. The IV is constructed as follows, which is the number of plots involved in tenure devolution in one province, excluding all plots within the same prefectural city where plot I at time t is located. This part actually this is an interaction term. The first part, as I mentioned just now, actually this measures the policy progress within the province, which can have effect on villagers' decision making. And the other term in the interaction is the dummy variable, indicating whether the plot was individually managed before 2003, because the new round started 2002. So this one actually is the predetermined situation of the plots. If the plot is individually managed, then there's no possibility for further devolution. If the plot is collectively managed, collectively owned or collectively managed, this means there's a potential supply for tenure reform. So this is basically the instrumental variable we construct for devolution in our econometric model. Next, let me show you some main results about our analysis. So our main key variable is the devolution, which is that whether plot I is further allocated to individual houses from collective owned forests. 0 is no, right? And we can see that after we control for the based on the instrumental variable analysis, we can see that there's a significant impact of the tenure reform on forest growth, and this is positive. If we look at the tenure reform, the impact on tenure reform on tree species richness, we don't see significant effect. Next, just now, sorry, this one actually, it's ordinary list square. We know that we suffer from endogeneity. Here, actually, after we do this IV, we have significant impact. And this one, for tree species, it's only 10%, and the magnitude is small because it's only 0.42, right? Next, we do conduct some heterogeneity analysis by origin. Means that the forests, whether they are generated by like natural measures or by like a plantation, right? And we can see that the natural forests and plantations dilution both have significant impact. But if we look at the reform on species richness, we only see that there's a significant impact of reform on species richness in forests that are naturally regenerated. For plantations, we don't see a significant impact. And we also look at the differences heterogeneity by forest age groups. And this is this one is actually middle. First, we look at the forest growth. Next, we look at changes in species richness. And for each variable, we look by two age groups. One is middle and young forests. The other one is nearly mature and mature forests. And we can see that devolution has significant and positive impact on forest growth for those middle and young age forests, but we don't see significant impact on forest growth in those nearly mature and mature forests. We don't see any significant impact on tree species, both in middle and young tree species and nearly mature and mature forests. Last, we look at the heterogeneity by fast-growing versus non-fast-growing tree species. And we can see that the tenure reform has strong and significant impact on fast-growing forests, while it doesn't have significant impact on non-fast-growing trees forests. In terms of species richness, for fast-growing forests, we don't see significant impact, while we see a significant impact of reform on non-fast-growing forests. And actually, we also look at the management regime. Because of limited time, I'm not going through, but we just take a quick look. We see that we have the strong and significant impact on forest growth, while we don't really have significant impact of the reform on tree species. And we also look at the logging, whether the plot experienced logging during our study period, or whether the plot has suffered from natural disaster during our 3 study periods. We both see similar evidence, consistent evidence that reform has strong impact on forest growth, while it doesn't have significant impact on species richness. So based on our analysis, we get some preliminary conclusions. The privatization of collectively owned forest through the new round of forest tenure reform has promoted forest growth while not resulting in significant change in species richness. This means that at least the new reform doesn't lead to a win-win solution for both for carbon and biodiversity. As I mentioned in just now, that we have low standing volume in collective-owned forest region, and we see that the reform has strong impact on tree growth, which has strong implication for forest carbon. This implies that there are opportunities for improved forest management in China in future's forest carbon market. However, currently our country only includes afforestation and reforestation projects in our voluntary forest carbon market. Next, we are going to combining plot level data with GIS data and to look at whether conservation or natural forest protection or nature reserve conservation would lead to similar results. And we also will look at whether logging quota arrangement has impact on the reform. So thank you very much. This is our very preliminary results.
Thank you very much, Professor Yatengong. So last speaker is Professor Lesos Darumo from Australian National University. She is an expert of the social forests, REDD, Red Plus, and I think uncomparable expert of the Indonesian forests. So could you start the presentation, Dr. Lesos Darumo?
Thank you very much, Professor Akau. Thank you very much for inviting me to participate in this Congress. Can you hear me well, and can you see my screen?
Yes.
Can you see my screen? Okay. Yeah, okay. Thank you very much. Yes. So yes, today I will basically just provide a review on the Indonesian case in the role of forest land use and in the climate change, mitigation. So different from the previous speakers, I'm not an economist, so this is more on governance and institutions. So this will focus on Indonesia's opportunities and challenges actually in contributing to climate mitigation. Okay, so to provide a context first, this shows that Indonesia is actually one of the 10 top emitters. Here we see this data is 2011. But I think it hasn't changed very much. The trend is still relatively the same. So you can see here that Indonesia's emissions from land use change and forestry is quite significant. We can see the dark blue here is quite significant as part of the total greenhouse gas emissions. Now, in Indonesia, as other countries already ratified the Paris Agreement in 2016 and are committing to reduce emissions by submitting the first NDC, updated NDC, and then updated NDC again in 2022. Although Indonesia has committed to reducing emissions since 2009, by reducing emissions by 26% vis-a-vis business as usual emissions in 2020 on its own, and 41% reduction emissions commitment with international support. After aligned with the Paris Agreement, aligned with the ratification of Paris Agreement. The country submitted its first NDC in 2016. So the commitment to reduce emissions increased by 29% compared to a BAU in 2030 on its own, and 38% with international support. At the end of 2021, the commitment increased to 41% if with international support. And then again, in 2022, the country updated the NDC to even increase the commitment of emissions reductions to become 31.9% on its own and 43.2% if with international support. Now, I'd like you to see the yellow, the highlighted yellow rows. This is the commitment for emissions reductions from the forestry and other land use sector. So Indonesia basically is relying on two sectors to fulfill their NDC commitment, which is the energy sector here and the forestry sector. The forestry sector, if you look at the updated NDC, the forestry sector contributes or targeted to contribute more than half of the entire reduction emissions commitment by itself, on its own, and with international support. So 17.4% of the 31.9% commitment of emission reductions is from FOLU, is targeted from FOLU, and then on its own, and 25.4% of the 43.2% reductions emissions with international support is committed from FOLU. So that shows how important the forest and land use sector in Indonesia as part of its mitigation, climate change mitigation program. So Indonesia has also a long-term strategy for low carbon and climate resilience, where it targets net zero emissions by 2060 and achieve FOLU net sink, that is negative emissions, by 2030 through sustainable forest management, enhancement of forest carbon stock, prevention of deforestation and degradation in natural forests, and then plantation and also plantation forests and concessions. Now, to understand Indonesia's forests, the state of Indonesia's forests, just to provide a review for those unfamiliar with Indonesia's forest condition. So Indonesia's land area comprised of cover 180 million hectares, and about 60% of the total land area is assigned as forest area or forest zone. But not all of the forest zone is actually forested. Some of it is not forested, and some forests also exist in areas outside the forest zone. Now, importantly for climate change, actually, Indonesia houses 14 million hectares of tropical peatland. As you know, it has very high carbon content, much more than forests in mineral soils. It's estimated about 3/4 of the country's total carbon pool is situated in the peatlands of Indonesia. In addition, Indonesia also houses 20% of the world's mangroves, so with high carbon absorption and storage capacity. Now, importantly, however, the forests are not just the forests by themselves. A lot of people live around and inside the forest. So 19,000 villages are located around forests. There are about 79,000 villages in the entire Indonesia. So about 20%, 20% of villages are located around forests, with a population of about almost 50 million people. So but these many people are actually dependent on forests, directly or indirectly. Now, after realizing or acknowledging the roles of forests for livelihoods, for the economy, and also for climate change, we need to understand also there are challenges of unsustainable management, namely deforestation and forest degradation, peatland and mangrove conversion and degradation, and also forest and land fires, all with implication on greenhouse gas emissions. If we look at this slide, I'm sorry this is not very clear. Yeah, so here this graph shows the emissions from the FOLU, forestry and other land uses, including peat fire. Now, peat fire is a very important contributor to emissions in Indonesia. So it's reflected in the red graph here. These are all peat fires. So when there are big fires, large fires, the emissions shot up, such as what happened in 2006, and then in 2015, very high, and then in 2019 as well. So always often coincide with El Nino. So when El Nino occurs, usually there are huge fires, huge wildfires that destroy forests and peatland. This is a graph from the Copernicus Atmospheric Monitoring System Center, where they monitor the daily emissions. For instance, the yellow graph shows the daily emissions, mostly from forest fires in August and September 2015, and the red ones show the emissions in 2019, all coinciding with the forest fires, the large forest fires. Now, I just would like to show you a little bit, a bit of a flavor of what actually looks on the ground, yeah? So this is actually peatland. It's dried peatland. It's degraded peatland in South Sumatra. And this morning, a small fire started. This is still small in 2019 when it was very dry and over there. So it was like 10 years ago, this peatland was deep peat, so more than 10 meters deep. But eventually, by 2019, it's already very dry. So when peat is very dry, it's very combustible. It's very flammable. And when it's on fire, it's super difficult to actually put it off because it's basically fuel, yeah? It's burning fuel. Now, what are actually the driving, the forces that help that what do you call it, that drives these fires? First of all, there are governance and institutional challenges within Indonesia's forest zone. First one is related to tenure. As the previous speaker suggested, there's a tenure issue here. Now, the forest zone is under the purview of the state. It's controlled by the state. But as you see in the previous slide as well, there are many villages, there are many communities living within and around the forest. So there are customary and local claims. Thus, there's overlapping tenure. Yeah. Well, the government, as the one with the authority of forest zone, chose a large-scale approach where rights are given to timber and agriculture concessions mostly. So what happens is there are a lot of conflicts that sometimes promote fire, burning lands in order to claim the land. Yeah. The second institutional issue is actually centralization. So all of the authority of forest zone is situated with the central government. Now, this is void of subsidiary principles where the decision-making over resources should be closest to where the resource is, yeah? The government did try to decentralize some of the authority, but it failed in 1999-2020. It failed, it didn't work, so it again took the authority, and the authority of the forest zone became centralized again. Another issue is with the spatial planning. There's always a tug of war, yeah, between economic development versus conservation, and that is reflected in the spatial planning that is overlapping and very difficult to get an agreement between local government the subnational governments and the national governments. Now, this is just a picture of an indigenous community. This is, you can see the sky here. Actually, you cannot see the sky because this is haze. This is next door, very close to the area where the fire, the picture of the fire that I showed you earlier. So this is an indigenous community in South Sumatra. It used to be a nomaden, so shifting around. But because of the tenure, and they have been there for ages, for generations, but because of the tenure situation, because the state controls the land, these indigenous community have to move out and have to be resettled. So there is no incentive, or it promotes lack of incentives to manage the forest well. Oops. Okay. Oops. Why is this? Okay. So the other major challenges are illegal logging. Illegal logging continues to be rampant across Indonesia, across forested areas Indonesia. The conversion of forests and peatlands in areas under concession, both timber and plantation, and also in other areas. So conversion of forests and peatland in areas continue to occur not only by large-scale entities, not only by large-scale undertakings, but also by smallholders, by small farmers. Encroachment of protected and conservation areas continue to occur, and then rehabilitation and challenges of the degraded areas or deforested areas continue to have significant challenges in terms of short resources, inadequate resources, and with the biophysical constraints of doing rehabilitation and restorations itself. Now this is a picture of national park in Central Kalimantan in early 2020. Wildfires occurred here in end of 2019. So some of the fires were reported to have started from people who went into the area to do fishing. Yeah, so some kind of encroachment to the national park. Now, there have been policy improvement. A lot of several good policy are being put. The first one is moratorium of license issuance and conversion of primary forest and peatland. There's more stringent policy on peatland use and conservation. The government put up ambitious peatland restoration targets, and then also established a land reform scheme where they wanted to enhance community tenure rights through social forestry schemes. And then there's a strict no burning policy for everyone, including concessions and smallholders. Concessions and smallholders usually burn to clear land because that's the more effective and the most efficient way to clear land. Now, although there are the appropriate policies, improvement in policies, there are challenges in implementation. The first one is the moratorium on license issuance and conversion of primary forests and peatlands. Primarily, the challenges in the conversion the moratorium of conversion of primary forests and peatlands, because a lot of these companies already have land bank, so they could do that. And there's the more stringent policy on peatland use and conservation. There is limited monitoring capacity on vast areas of land. The ambitious peatland restoration targets from 2016 to 2020, for example, the government target to restore peatland was over 2 million hectares. But there are a lot of multiple challenges because peatland is basically very difficult to restore. It's not just planting, but it's basically restoring the hydrological system. So once peatland is restored, it's quite difficult to, which means that they become dry. It's quite difficult to re-wet the area. Now, although there's the community tenure rights through social forestry program, we found that they need a lot of facilitation and support to ensure that communities can actually benefit from this program, from this improved tenure rights, rather than only giving them additional burden. Policy on the no burning, there are clearly enforcement challenges, both in application on powerful corporations and on the smallholders, because a lot of powerful corporations who experience fires within their concessions have actually been brought to court by the government, but the processes are usually protracted and very expensive. On the smallholders, on the other hand, there are also enforcement challenges where there's a legitimate policy legitimacy. The policy of the no burning, of the burning ban, is often questioned by the enforcement agents themselves because on livelihood grounds. So there's this what they call it, disconnect, between livelihoods and peatland protection imperatives. Now, despite some challenges, there have been policy positive outcomes. So Indonesia have received REDD+ results-based payment from the Green Climate Fund for reducing emissions between 2014 and 2016. And then also there's some money from the FCPF Carbon Fund. So that's a jurisdictional REDD from 2019 to 2000, based on 22 tons of CO2 emission reduction for 2019-2024. And then Jambi Biocarbon Fund, that's also a jurisdictional REDD monies for the Jambi province. And then national REDD results-based payment from Norway, 56 million and then 100 million. There are also a few carbon projects who have really sold some of the carbon to companies outside Indonesia. So I think that's just an overview of what the forest land use sector in Indonesia looks like, and the opportunities and the challenges actually for climate mitigation, for climate action. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So please stay that we will continue to start the panel discussion, and I would like to hand moderator to Professor Liu. And we need some preparation.
Okay, let's move on to the discussion session. Thank you so much for all our speakers for their insightful presentation. And we heard a lot of valuable information, and we also covered some fascinating topics today. And I'm sure many of you have some questions. However, before you raise your hand, let me ask some questions to speakers. Okay, let's start with a question for Dr. Akal. From your presentation, you just mentioned the importance of green GDP and the macro optimal economics. can you explain more how to combine the forest carbon storage into green GDP?
Traditional method is that growing stock times price, and the price means social cost of carbon. That makes the value of the forest from the viewpoint of the carbon storage. Yeah. Very simple answer, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for your thoughtful response. Let's move to Dr. Song. Dr. Song, from your presentation, I think the part reforestation is very interesting, and you evaluate the value of reforestation and afforestation. And from landowners, I think there is not enough benefits or revenue for landowners to plant more trees. So what's your opinions for policymakers to increase the incentive policies to landowners or to farmers? What's your recommendation?
Okay, thank you for your question. It's a good question. Actually, as you mentioned, sometimes forest owners cannot get enough benefits after reforestation, especially for small-scale private forest owners do not get enough benefits. That's the big issue, I think, in many countries, including Korea. Actually, in Korea, we tried to subsidize small-scale private forest owners to compensate their cost for planting trees and tending trees, so on. However, it has a limitation. So we should find alternative ways to provide benefit for those forest owners, including carbon trading and also ecosystem payment, ecosystem service payments, so on. So those are the main issues we are heavily working on at this moment in Korean Forestry Society. Okay, thank you.
And now we open the question for everyone here. Is any question from the floor? Okay, please.
My question is for the economists in the panel. So it seems to me that Korea, Taiwan, Japan, and relatively China has been able to reforest it. Yeah. But countries like Indonesia have struggled. And in a way, although the rate of deforestation lately declined, but we are not successful in terms of reforestation. So is this because reforestation could be successful when the economy is already quite advanced? Is the requirement to be successful in reforestation is you do need to have GDP per capita that already quite, otherwise it won't be successful. Is that kind of requirement that needed? Also the other thing is that you need that the economy not depend on the forest. So there's two requirements that seem to me what I learned from Korea, Japan, Taiwan are that fact. And if that is the requirement, then developing countries basically doomed. Yeah, they just not being able. Second question for all, when we discuss the value of forests for carbon sequestration, none of you actually mentioned diversity. Yeah, that we want to deforest because there is a benefit of diversity. Even in the calculation that I saw, none of them really considered the value of diversity. Why is that? You know, it's because that all the reforestation are monoculture, and so we do not have deforestation, or what is exactly the issue? Thank you.
Let me answer first. Regarding the first question by you, it's a kind of the environmental Kuznets curve relationship between the development of economy and forest resources. So a lot of advanced countries experience the shape of the so-called, in this case, actually U-shape. However, this U-shape is made by the distorted price. I mean, the price is only reflect the timber price, timber value. However, the time changed. Now we have to consider the lot of benefit from the forests, including carbon sequestration and biodiversity reservoirs, something like that. Also the flood control. If we properly impose or evaluate such a cost, then no matter what the stage of the development, we have incentive to conserve the forest and enhance the afforestation. This is my impression about the first question. And the second question, I think your question is about the trade-off between the biodiversity and carbon sequestration, the storage service. Am I right?
I'm not arguing for conflict, but why don't people talk about deforestation as well as the value of forests, not only for carbon concentration?
Maybe I would like to yield this answer to him, but my answer is zoning. So it should be separated for the argument. So please.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your question. That's a good question. Actually, we should see a balance between active forest management for carbon sequestration and biodiversity. We see many limitations of monoculture forest management in terms of biodiversity. So at this moment, we are trying to find a balance between active forest management and biodiversity in many ways. And one limitation is it is very difficult to quantify the value of biodiversity. So there are many studies on quantification of biodiversity in terms of monetary value. So if we have more concrete results out of those studies, we may have a better understanding how we get balance between forest management and biodiversity conservation. But surely it should be a direction that we should take in the future to have a proper balance between those two important components. Thank you.
Professor Gang. Okay, Professor Gang, are you online? Can you hear me? No. Okay. Dr. Riso Sudarmo. Are you there? Oh, no. Okay, okay.
They need to connect.
Reconnect?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, okay. Okay, I see. Okay. I think I can answer this question as well. In Taiwan, I think this is also a very challenging question, not only in developing country, even in Taiwan, due to the limitation of lands, our farmers can plant trees, plant crops, or plant solar panels. And of course, planting trees has lowest profit during these kinds of strategies. So, our government try to encourage the landowners to plant more trees. However, it is difficult because it has a longer time to make profit for forestation. So it is very challenging for Taiwanese. However, I think due to the environmental group pressure, I think there is improvement for environment by forest carbon or forest planting trees. So in my opinion, I think our government should provide more incentives, policies like carbon or methodologies to increase the money, the income for landowners. Or sometimes, as Professor Carl mentioned, the zoning is very important for Taiwan because nowadays Taiwanese can choose the best land uses for their profits. However, if the government can set a policy, environment policy, then it will be beneficial to environment. This is my opinion. Dr. Gang, are you there? Can you hear me? No connection. Okay. Okay, is there any question from the floor? No? Okay. I'm afraid that we have not enough time for this session. And thank you for the speakers' insightful presentation, and thank you to our speakers for their thoughtful responses. I think this is engaging discussion. So please join me to give big hand to the speakers. Okay, so thank you for your coming, and we hope you can enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for all the speakers of this session. Honorable professors and participants, the lunchtime is from 12 to 12:40. You may take a break in the semicircular space next to the conference hall or in the classroom on the first floor of the adjacent education building.
Lunch will be served in the eco-friendly meal boxes. After your meal, please make sure to return the meal boxes. Also, please use the corn-based cutlery provided in your gift bag during lunch to support environmental sustainability. If you have any problem, you may ask the staff in purple t-shirt for assistance. Thank you. Have a nice break.